All right, episode 86. Welcome to the Turnaround Boardroom. I am Paul Maskill, and we are back. We took 2 months off to revamp this show, and here we are. So today we're going to be talking about why do businesses doing $5 million to $8 million in revenue still run out of cash? And really want to kind of be very specific about this type of business that we're going to dive into today. This is mainly for the residential service businesses where you collect payments in the home at the time of completion. This episode is absolutely for you. And the reason why I bring that up is we know it's not an accounts receivable problem, because if you're collecting cash immediately or within the next day and cash still feels tight, then we can rule out that this is not an accounts receivable problem. And usually most time in the home service world, that is not the case. Now, if you're doing a lot of commercial work, a lot of construction work, then that's a different conversation for a different day. But today we're going to be talking about pricing and the structural problems that we see in businesses doing $5 million to $8 million in revenue and still have no money in the bank, where they're a week or two, a couple bad weeks, a payroll or two away from running out of money. At $5 to $8 million in revenue, things appear to be solid. The phones are ringing, the trucks are rolling, jobs are getting completed, phones ringing, all the things, payments being collected on time. From the outside looking in, looking at this business on Facebook or looking at this business if it's in your local market, you might be thinking, wow, this is like a very healthy operation. They know what they are doing. And here's the thing, they usually do know what they're doing from a delivering the service standpoint. To get to $5 to $8 million in revenue, especially in residential service, you have to be good at what you do. You have to be able to build a team. You have to be able to train people. You got to get all the good Google ratings and all that thing. However, there's still the other side of that we might not be making any money or not have any cash in the bank. So owners at this stage, what I see a lot is they assume that if they could just do a little bit more revenue or keep the schedule a little bit fuller, then that cash pressure would ease. They're like, you know what, once we go from 5 to 6, then this isn't going to be an issue. Or if we could just get there, then this wouldn't be an issue. But instead, this is usually what happens. Even with strong sales, with a strong brand, getting all the Google reviews, receiving immediate payment, the bank balance never really gets comfortable. It might get comfortable for a little bit, and then we got to pay back the line of credit. Payroll still creates tension. We see payroll creeping up, and we're counting down the days. It happens every day. So I'm here to tell you, if that's you, you're not alone. Every unexpected expense feels heavy. It feels like, man, didn't we just do a workers' comp audit? Or didn't we just pay for this subscription and it comes up again? So here is the, here's the illusion trap that, I see a lot of business owners get stuck in at this level. Logically, we should have cash in the bank. It's like, wow, we're doing so much money. We're doing 5, 6, 7, 8, $10 million in revenue, but there's no money left over. It just doesn't make sense. But here is the thing. Here is what we actually see. So we're going to get into the meat and potatoes here. Now, the flaw in that thinking is we assume everything else is okay. We just need more revenue. And I am here to tell you, I've said this a million times. If you've listened to any of my content, gone to any things that I've talked at, any workshops we put on, but if you don't have cash now, more revenue will not solve that problem, because it means you already have a structural problem now. You already have a systemic problem now. Building the house any bigger with a wobbly foundation doesn't mean the foundation's all of a sudden going to get solid. It means it's actually going to get more wobbly. So let's talk about what's actually happening. So first, when money is coming into the business, usually what I see, pricing that is mathematically wrong. So let's start there. If we don't have a proven process, a proven formula to determine what do we need to charge per each, billable hour, what do we need to charge for these installs, what does our price book need to look like, we're simply guessing. I see anything and everything in how businesses are pricing. Most of the time, there is no rhyme or reason, and it's not predictable. Our number one goal here is to make sure our clients create consistent, positive cash flow, which means it's got to be predictable. If we know this amount of money comes in, this amount of money is going to be left over. At the end of the day, we started this business for a reason, and that's usually to have a better life. We thought we could do this differently. We had a vision. We wanted to travel. We wanted to spend more time with our kids. We wanted to invest in real estate, whatever it might be. So how do we get a better business? How do we get a better business? How do we get a better business? How do we get a better life? And what is the gap? And the number one gap that I see is pricing. So some businesses are using a flat rate pricing model, but they don't actually understand it. It's like, well, this is what we charge for a surge protector, or this is what we charge to put in this hot water tank. But if there isn't a process behind it and you can't actually go back and do job costing and say, oh, we actually made the money we said we were going to be, it's not going to work. We also see this all the time. Well, this is kind of what my market can bear. And, we called around and some customers said we were too high when we presented pricing, so we know we're out of line. And here's the thing. Every business of every quote unquote competitor, they're building a different business. They have a different structure. They have a different office. They have different goals. Everything's different. Their core values are different. Their vision's different. Their mission's different. So we cannot back into pricing based on competitors. And then lastly, even if we think we know what we're doing, we can't. What I see a lot of times is we're not truly understanding what does it actually cost to send somebody to a house for an hour? What is the quote unquote fully loaded labor cost? What is our burden? What are all the things that we need to include in order to make sure we can actually be profitable? I see it a lot, especially this time of year. So we're recording this early 2026. Everyone has set their quote unquote budget for the year. The budget is really just their goal. Well, this is what we want to do. We want to get to 15 to 20% net profit. We want to do $7 million. And then by February, definitely by the time you're listening to this, that budget, that goal sheet, whatever it is out the window and we're back into survival mode. So let's not go there. Let's not do that. We need to get our pricing dialed in. So like I said, even though we're bringing in all sorts of money, if we're not charging enough for what we're actually doing, it doesn't matter how much revenue we're doing, we're still not going to have a leftover to cover everything else. So what's wild is when pricing is off, even by a small amount, there is a massive impact. And I had a guest on the show sometime in 2025. I don't actually remember who it was, but it was I'm going to just leave this here for you guys as well. Super easy to understand. So say right now, whatever you're selling, say you're selling it for $100 and your net profit is $5. So $100 and your net profit is $5. Well, if you go do twice as much work, right? Well, let's just go get more revenue. Well, we're still going to have the same net profit margin. So if we do 200, we're then just going to have $10 left over. So we can't ever get ahead because we have one bad month, we dip into the line of credit, we had 2 bad months, or winter wasn't that cold, or shoulder season was longer, or the summer never really got hot, whatever it is, depending on your industry. There's always a reason we're going to have a slow months. And if we dip into our line of credit or our cash balance goes down, it takes a lot longer to get it back. So going back to this example, say we sell it for 100 and our net profit is $5. So we make $5 for every $100 widget we sell. If you raised the price on that widget by 10%, so $110, so 110 instead of 100, those $10 more or less are going to go straight to the bottom line. So now all of a sudden, even though you only increased your price by 10%, your profit dollar amount went from $5 to $15. So it literally tripled. So a 10% increase in your price, call it that, whatever you're charging for this widget, went from 100 to 110, but that 10 extra dollars goes straight to the bottom line because our overhead is still the same, our marketing's still the same, our office payroll is still the same. Now, yes, if you're paying people on performance pay, maybe we lose 15 to 20% of that extra $10, so we only made 13 instead of 15. But either way, you get the idea. When pricing is off just a little bit, there is a massive impact. Now, I don't want everyone just to go raise your prices without knowing why you're raising them. I don't love that idea. Yes, go ahead, raise your prices 10%. You will make more money starting tomorrow. But when we can actually show our salespeople, our technicians, why we're raising our price and what it actually needs to be, it's much more likely to stick. They're going to be like, wow, I didn't realize it cost that much to send me out to a job. So a few percentage points of margin, multiply that across thousands of jobs, creates a permanent cash deficit. So you probably feel like you're doing everything right. You're selling, you're delivering, you're collecting, but there is just not enough money left over. And that's what we really got to dial in with our pricing. So you don't have to go get it, but there is a free pricing calculator on my website. If you just go to thebluecollaradvisors.com, go there, grab the pricing calculator. It'll walk you through exactly what you need to do. It is it's a spreadsheet. It's got a video to go with it. It's got a PDF download. You don't have to use everything in there. But usually what I find is even when our clients go through that, they're like, wow, I didn't realize we need to account for that. So not going to get into the whole nuts and bolts of that, but some of the things you need to account for is non-billable time. So if your tech, a really good service tech is only working 50% of the time, well, we got to recover that other 50% when we are selling our labor. We also got to take into account payroll tax and workers' comp and health insurance and 401k and vacation and paid holidays and all these other things just to figure out what is the actual labor cost. And then we have to look at all the other things we need to recover in order to achieve our goals, be profitable, stay in business, and really follow through on our promises we're making to our employees and the promises we're making to our customers. So that's problem number one is pricing. I see it 9 times out of 10, we do not have the right pricing, or we do have the right pricing, but our service techs or our comfort advisors or our salespeople have the ability to lower the price once they go out and the customer says that's too expensive. So that's another conversation for another day. But if you're allowing your people to do that and it's bringing your margins down below what it needs to be, you're going to be stuck. So where does it need to be? Gross profit, in my opinion, needs to be, depending on your business. Now, we're talking about residential service. We need to be at least 50%, in my opinion. Got to be at least 50%. The most financially healthy residential service companies are between 50 and 60% gross profit. What does that mean? We've talked about it a million times, but it never hurts to hear it again. Revenue minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit. So if you have $2 million in revenue and your cost of goods sold is $1 million, that means your gross profit is $1 million, which would be 50%. So two biggest things in cost of goods sold is going to be our labor, and then all the material, supplies, equipment that we're using out in the field and selling to our customers, whether we're in HVAC, plumbing, electrical, garage doors, roofs, whatever it might be. I see most companies not charge enough for all the inputs, all their cost of goods sold of what they need to do in order to hit that gross profit, because then after gross profit, we need to then cover our overhead, which is our second issue. So when we look at overhead, I like to look at it basically 3 categories. So we've got our marketing, we've got our office payroll or leadership payroll. So anybody not in the field, we got all their payroll. We're going to pay them regardless, even if nobody turns a wrench today. And then we also have all of our other overhead, rent, utilities, software, vehicles most people have in there, all the office supplies, everything else that we need to pay to run our business. And at $5 to $8 million in revenue, most residential service businesses have an office structure, to be honest, that is designed for $8 to $10 million, but they might only be producing 6. So usually, and we'll get into the reason behind that, but usually we have too many people in the office. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of, just popped in my head, a couple of things that I like to look at. A ratio of field employees to office employees, at least 2 to 1. So if we have 10 people out in the field, we shouldn't have more than 5 people in the office. Now, ideally, as we scale, that can go to 3 to 1. So 3 to 1 might look like, we have, 21 employees out in the field, and we've got 7 people in the office. The other thing we can look at is revenue per employee. So take up all the people that work, add up all the people that work in your company, regardless of what they do. So all of your dispatchers, CSRs, apprentice, people in the field, technicians, comfort advisors, installers, sales, anybody and everybody, we need to be at least, in my opinion, a minimum of $300,000 of revenue per employee. So if you have 10 employees, regardless of where they're at, we should be doing at least $3 million. So that was just kind of a quick side note, a couple of things that I like to just, give people that it's very easy to figure out, are we financially healthy or not? Usually those two are pretty good indicators. So that is going back to our second issue. The second biggest issue I see is we have too many people in the office for not enough people out in the field, too many coordinators, too many CSRs, too many dispatchers, too many managers, full-time bookkeeper when we're only doing a couple $1 million or whatever it might be. Now, the reason for this is when you scale to to ensure you don't go completely crazy, you have to hire people before you need them full-time, to be honest. So if you think about it, when you're doing, call it $1 million, $1.5 million in revenue, you might have had one person in the office answering the phone and doing dispatch. But then that person just doesn't have enough bandwidth. So then you split the role. Now you have a CSR and you have a dispatcher. Well, the one person, maybe they're at 110% capacity, but when we split that role, now, even if they're 2 brand new people, they might only be at 60% capacity. So all of a sudden there's a bunch of inefficiency in our organization. We went from one person to two people. In theory, in that role, we doubled it, but we didn't double our revenue. So that's where it can become a dangerous squeeze, that not only is our pricing a little bit off, we're not hitting your gross profit, but then we also have too many people in the office for the revenue. Now, I'm not saying go fire a bunch of people today. You want to map it out, do a 12-month projection of cash flow and, when will we need these people? Because, say our target goal is 20% net profit and we're getting close to that, then it probably means we're ready to hire somebody. Right? Maybe we drop down to 16 to 70%. Now, where I see people get stuck is they're doing all the work in the field, right? They're doing $5 to $8 million of revenue in the field, but they're not charging enough for it. So there's not enough money to pay all the people to begin with, let alone pay people to scale. So if we have enough people to do $7 million, but we're only at 6, if we're financially healthy, that's okay. But if we're priced wrong and we have too many people, it's kind of a double whammy, to be honest. So what happens? What do I see happen? When this goes unaddressed, these same patterns continue to show up. We're stressed out, can't sleep well at night. Payroll is way too much of an emotional roller coaster. We get, we're irritated. The cash buffer disappears. We're dipping into our line of credit, and the line of credit really just becomes a permanent tool. And then before we know it, we can't get out of that hole. You can't take on enough debt to get out of debt. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of people try. And this, it doesn't mean that we don't know how to run the business. We know how to deliver the service. We're getting all the reviews, the phone's ringing, we got all the technicians, happy customers. We're doing all the things. But if there's no money left over, it doesn't matter. So taking this into kind of the theme of the show as we go along, Turnaround Boardroom, a lot of our clients, they want to be financially healthy, whether or not they want to remove themselves from the business or they want to sell it one day. And taking this from a banker's perspective, when you go to a bank, whether it's, hey, we want to grow through acquisition, or somebody's going to buy you, or you need to go get a loan to scale, whatever it might be. But when we see all the margins going up and down, cash balances going up and down, especially in residential service, when we know it's not a timing issue, debt continues to creep up. The bank doesn't love that. They see this as someone that does not know how to run a business. It is a control issue. It's not a sales problem. And control is really what, banks, buyers, sellers, everybody, the whole financial part of this business, that's what people care about. Like, do they actually know what they're doing? Because they're going to look at it. How you do anything is how you do everything. And if if things are just not predictable, if we're not creating consistent positive cash flow, if we don't have predictable profits, it's going to be an issue for many things. If you're looking to sell, buyers are going to look at, pricing and overhead and all that kind of stuff. And if there's not real math behind pricing and there's not a predictable profit, if we do this amount of revenue, they're going to be really scared off. Your business is going to be worth a lot less, because they're going to know if we come in here and do things, quote unquote, the right way and make it profitable, what is that? How much disruption is that going to cause? Because we got to change a lot of the things we're doing. And what do we actually need to start doing? So that's really the ultimate last question here before we start to wrap up the show is, we can't assume close enough when we're pricing. I see a lot of times they're like, how much is that piece of equipment? Or how much is that surge protector? Or how much is that hot water heater? Or how much is that capacitor? They're like, nah, it's around this. Well, we can't run a very successful business with using the word around. It's about $100. Well, is it about $100 or is it $100? We can't run our business like that anymore. We're doing way too much revenue. We got way too much responsibility, way too many people working for our business, way too many mortgages depending on our business to just be guessing. We cannot be guessing based on what other people do. The most successful, disciplined operators, owners of businesses, they know exactly what they need to charge. They know what happens when they charge exactly that. And then taking it to the next thing, they start running their office as if it is today. They're not saying, well, what if we get to this? Well, in 12 months, we're going to be there. Or we want to be there in 2 years. And this person's a really good employee. And, even though we don't need him today, we're going to need him in 2 years. Well, if you keep doing what you're doing, there's not going to be 2 years from now. You're going to be out of business. You're going to be out of money. You're going to be bankrupt, whatever it might be. So let's actually look at, what do we actually need to do today? Because if we solve today's problems, become more financially healthy, we'll then actually get to tomorrow and 12 months and 24 months from now, and then we'll figure it out from there. How do I know that? Because you figured out how to get here and you're doing a lot harder than you need to be. So again, I'm not telling you to go cut a bunch of people, lay off a bunch of people. That's not the way to do it. Never works. But we need to be aligned with where are we at? Where do we need to be? What are our goals? What are the numbers saying? If we're doing $5 to $8 million in revenue in residential service and cash is still a problem, lastly, please don't assume you need more leads or you need more volume, you need more revenue to solve the problem. If you haven't figured it out at 5 million, giving you 6 million won't matter. It's just like if you give a kid $100 and they don't know how to manage it, the solution is that, well, if we give them 1,000, they'll be fine, right? We see lotto winners, many lotto winners run out of money very quickly because they never had to manage money. So if you can't manage $100, you're not going to be able to manage 1,000 or $1 million or $1 billion. Same thing with a business. If you don't know how to run a $4 million business profitably, you're never going to run a $6 million business profitably. Now, you might be able to get to 6 million just by pure effort, hard work, working later, grinding it out, line of credits, doing a lot of creative stuff, moving the balances here, doing this, refinancing this, merchant cash advance here, doing all these things. However, you're just making the hole bigger, making the problem bigger, making the stress larger. I'd rather have a $5 million business at 20% net profit than a $10 million business at 5% net profit. Now, a lot of people, they want the ego. They want the picture with all the trucks. They want to say they're an 8-figure company, whatever it is. I want the profit. I want the predictability. I want to sleep well at night. I want to have cash in the bank. And if we can do $5 million at 20%, it's going to be a lot easier to get to 6 to 7 to 8 to 10 at 20% versus, well, let's get to 10 and then figure it out. If you do that, have that mindset, you'll probably never get to 10. And if you do, you're going to be in too big of a hole to get it turned around. So that's all I got. I'm going to leave you this. If this episode feels uncomfortable, if sounds familiar, you're not alone. I will tell you that you're not alone. We work with dozens of companies, $3 million to $10 million in the home service space every single year who finally decided enough was enough. If you need help, if you need resources, if you need guidance, like I said, head on over to thebluecollaradvisors.com. There's plenty of resources, link to our YouTube channel, the pricing calculator I talked about. You can go there. There's a bunch of resources. You can also book a free call if you want to chat. Happy to do that. That is the purpose of this podcast. We want to create clarity. We want to have the tough conversations because that's when progress is made. And if this conversation helped you do that, you are in the right place. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next boardroom briefing.